on this multi-stakeholder event to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the ILO Convention C189, Decent Work for Domestic Workers. Those who don't know me, I think I don't have to go to the housekeeping slides. I assume that everybody is familiar now. The meeting will be recorded. Please mute your mics. If you don't speak, please enter your questions and comments in the question and answer button or in the chat box. For those who don't know me, I'm Kerstin Howald. I'm working with EFAT. EFAT is one of the European Trade Union Federations. We are representing workers in the food chain, so from agriculture, food production to the hospitality sector. I'm in charge normally of the hotel, restaurant, catering sector. And EFAT is also representing domestic workers in the part household services. I'm still in charge of domestic workers. From September, 1st of September, we'll have a new colleague, a new policy officer who will be in charge of domestic workers, Grace Papa. I think Grace is with us here. And we also have with us here today many other of the colleagues from all the countries who helped EFAT to build a strong domestic work sector within EFAT. As I said, welcome to this panel. We do not start with a video. This will come later. A bit of the background, I think we heard a lot of figures today. We all know now that there are 9.5 million domestic workers in Europe, that 3.1 of them are working undeclared. We know that this is a big challenge. It's a big challenge to bring domestic workers into the formal labor market, but we think if we succeed, that this can also be a win-win situation for all. It's a win for domestic workers who certainly, when they are working in the formal labor market, have better working conditions, social security protection, better salaries. For the users, for the clients, it's also a win because they certainly get better services. They have legal certainty, they have safety, but also for the countries. So countries will have higher tax income, higher social security contributions, and also less transfer costs. I fully agree with Mark, what he said, that in the opening session, we really had some very strong messages from all the people there. And I think we also had very clear messages with regard to undeclared work in this opening session. Just to mention a few, Claire Hopton from ILO, I think in her excellent flagship report on domestic work, she clearly pointed out that there is a significantly higher probability for domestic workers to work informally, to work in an undeclared way. And I think the numbers she mentioned was 2 to 4.5 times. Also very appreciated Miguel Felipe Pardal Cabrita, the Portuguese labor minister. He stated very clearly that undeclared work is fully incompatible with decent work, with decent societies. Nicolas Schmidt, also very clear, Commissioner on Employment and Social Affairs. He told us that the undeclared work platform has to deal with the domestic work sector. I think we all know that in many countries, whether they ratified ILO Convention 189 or not, there are discussions about policies for the domestic work sector, for the personal household services sector, and also in many countries there are measures taken to bring domestic workers into the formal labor market. So in this panel, we want to look into this question actually, so to see what are the challenges, but also what are the successful practices to tackle undeclared work in the domestic work sector. We have 6 speakers on the panel. I will just show you. How does it? Wait. Yes, here you see. So we have speakers, 6 speakers on this panel. 3 are from European institutions and 3 are from countries, from member states. And I think they will certainly deal with different aspects of this question. So we are really looking forward to this discussion. I will stop sharing my presentation because now I will briefly introduce all the speakers when it's their turn to come up with their presentation. And so the first speaker on our list you saw is Hans Dubois. So welcome, Hans. So I understand that every speaker who has a presentation will share it himself. Okay, so please, if you want, you can go ahead to upload your presentation. Hans Dubois is a researcher at Eurofound. I think you all know Eurofound, the European Foundation for the Improvement of Living and Working Conditions, based in Dublin, tripartite EU agency. I think, Hans, as far as I understood, you have a very rich academic background, and you are an expert in public administration and health. So correct me if I'm wrong. And I understand that you will present us today the latest findings and recommendations of Eurofound with a slight focus on home care. Yeah, this is correct. Okay, Hans, you have the floor. You have 10 minutes. I will monitor that. Thank you. You have the floor. Please.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for this really interesting conference. So Eurofound, the agency of the European Union, indeed is interested in domestic care. Well, kind of we wrote a report on long-term care and on the long-term care workforce. It's a growing sector, so the workforce expanded rapidly by 1/3 in 1 decade. In the context of aging societies, but also the many countries still with gaps to fill in terms of access to long-term care. And on the other hand, there's this increased emphasis on facilitating longer lives at home, where the European Pillar of Social Rights and its action plan, but also the COVID crisis is likely to increase this even further. So in this context, in this report, somewhat unexpectedly, domestic workers came really to the fore as a rather vulnerable group in a vulnerable situation. For instance, with regard to working conditions issues, and which we have heard across the conference already, but also with risks for quality of care. There's a particular risk for live-in care, which is really common in 7 member states only. So that in itself is interesting. It can be avoided most of the time if good access to home care is provided, but less stable employment conditions are concentrated in the domestic care sector. And so self-employment is rather uncommon in long-term care overall, but it is concentrated in this sector. And also data are really patchy, often explicitly excluded from surveys. Yeah, for instance, structure of survey, of earnings survey. Well, in a recent blog, we found that long-term care overall pays 21% below average. Well, that's even worse for domestic care. And indeed, related to all these issues is that it's rather often undeclared. So undeclared work is not so common in long-term care overall, probably because of large public stake in it, but where it's concentrated mainly in domestic care. Now, it's most common in the countries where there's a sizable group of people which earn enough to pay for domestic care. So not in the poorest member states yet. Where entitlements to publicly funded long-term care are limited or consist of cash payments with little control over the usage, like in Germany. Now, we mapped all kinds of estimates of undeclared workers. Of course, hard to do, but it's large groups, in particular in Germany, Spain, and Italy. Among the reasons, yes, of course, it's both for employers and workers. At first sight, it seems beneficial financially. Some older workers may also not like to declare it because it will be reduced from their pensions, or older domestic workers in some countries. Also, the inflexibility of home care providers sometimes contributes to some formats of domestic care. And in countries where there's a lack of profession, or there's a tradition of intrafamiliar care, this is sometimes translated when it's into the care provision when it's provided by an external actor, like in Greece, Italy, and Spain. Now, sanctions are one option to do something about it, fines, but in practice they're rare, and also it's really problematic because inspectorates are really unlikely to have a role. It's often illegal to search a home without a search warrant, or it's explicitly excluded from labor inspectorates usually. In any case, it's really difficult to enter a household and prove that the carer gets paid at all. And even if it would be, it's really labor intensive to identify households where there's usually just one worker involved. So there's some measures you can take, like Denmark, which implemented that cash buyers of services are co-responsible even for declaring very small amounts of earnings. But with particular potential has making declaring work really attractive for everybody. Now, some issues are hard. Can be hard to tackle if the risk of a fine is perceived low, if there's worry among people that, okay, it may be low cost to regularize a domestic worker, but maybe these costs will increase over time when it's registered for a few years. And also the role of undocumented migrants. That's also tricky for people to declare this, that they're working in their homes. Now, for instance, Cyprus and Malta have rather straightforward options of non-EU migrants obtaining residence permits for care work, so something can be learned there. Italy, very remarkably, has made the entitlement to COVID support also included migrant workers in it, and many of the domestic workers which applied for this, some payment of their employing household, were domestic care workers or domestic workers. Now, the solution probably lies in having good system of subsidized care, conditional on transparent provision and use. So for instance, in Luxembourg, Netherlands, you would not have undeclared work in care, long-term care work, or really rare occasions. Belgium, the voucher system, as has been mentioned, it's not for all types of long-term care, but some light forms are included. Cyprus, Denmark really tackled undeclared work, which is home care scheme, where there was a 50% subsidy, but only for carers which were registered. And there's some possible dilemmas. So for instance, good salaries versus, or conditions, working conditions versus the attractiveness to declare care. So in Austria, it's really easy and affordable to declare the care, but the conditions may be a bit less good. And for instance, in Italy, you have a collective agreement with high standards, but it's not so attractive to declare care. So many people remain undeclared up until the COVID subsidy, at least. Now, and there's also a dilemma, which can be if it's restricted to registered care providers, that there's enough choice for care users and flexibility which type of care they want. So there's some dilemmas, but not unsolvable, as we see in many countries. Some concluding remarks. So overall, domestic care work is really a risky part of long-term care provision, where particularly bad working conditions are concentrated, with also risks for quality of care. Now, the ILO Domestic Workers Convention contains many elements which can address these if signed by all the member states, and not only that, also adopted by the member states, because some of those who signed, we still see a lot of undeclared work, Germany, for instance, Italy. Many elements, and then many of the elements of the convention are conditional on care being declared. So that's really a precondition for many of these of this convention to work in the countries effectively. And we know how this can be done, as several member states have done so. Luxembourg, Netherlands, and several of the other Nordic member states. Undeclared work is most common in countries with above average earnings. However, the many member states in the east of Europe, where earnings were until recently too low still for many people at large scale to afford this type of undeclared domestic care, you can expect this to change. And in addition to these societies also aging, it's ever more important to take action, because otherwise it will be more and more the case in the next few years. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hans. You stayed below the time. Thank you very much. No, I think we fully agree with a lot of things you presented here. I mean, we all know that it's still difficult to have really reliable data on personal household service jobs. So, I mean, now ILO, Claire presented some, but I mean, we are still not there where we would like to have. I mean, we also all are aware that controlled sanctions are very difficult due to the nature of this work, mostly done in private households. So therefore, I think it's really probably why most countries rather went for preventive preventive actions. So to make it more attractive to declare personal and household service. So, I mean, we also fully agree that ILO C189 is certainly very valuable when it's ratified, but we also see that it's really even more important to make sure that it's also implemented and that it's really followed up in national legislation. And I think we will hear certainly more about this. I fully share your view. Let's hope that we don't have to wait another decade until we make more progress there. So yeah, thank you very much for your input. I'm pretty sure that we will continue to work with you. I mean, we know that Eurofound is working on all these questions now with social services, with care, long-term care, and so on. And we are also closely cooperating with you on all these issues. As I said, we have the first speaker from a European institution. Now let's go to the member states. And here I would like to invite now Andreas Zini. He is the president of the Italian Domestic Employers Association, Asindatcolf. I know that Andrea is planning to show us a little video, and after that, I assume you will have some 2 minutes to give some more explanation. Is it correct, my technical colleagues, that we will show the video first? We know that the interpreters have all the text.
No, prima faccio un commento,
Okay.
Karestein,
Okay.
poi il video.
Okay, please go ahead, Andrea. Ok, thank you.
Bene, grazie per l'invito intanto, e per prima cosa vorrei esprimere soddisfazione perché l'Italia nel 2013 è stata tra i primi paesi al mondo e prima in Europa a ratificare la Convenzione ILO 189. Questo non significa che in Italia non vi siano criticità in materia di lavoro domestico. Il tema più problematico è l'occupazione informale, come si diceva poco fa, e come a questo pannello è dedicato. È un fenomeno impressionante da noi per il numero di addetti che coinvolge. È una piaga sociale ed economica molto radicata, ma che riteniamo possa essere arginata con specifiche misure, alcune emergenziali, altre strutturali. La prova pratica che poi vi presenterò è realizzata lo scorso anno grazie alla ministra Nunzia Catalfo, ministra del lavoro, pur sostenuta da Sindatkov e permettetemi suggerita al governo, non sarà per nulla risolutiva. I lavoratori regolarizzati nel giro di qualche anno spariranno, torneranno al sommerso, è già successo. A Sindatkov, come rappresentante delle famiglie datrici di lavoro, chiede dal 2015 la deducibilità totale del costo sostenuto dalla famiglia, del costo del lavoro sostenuto dalla famiglia, unica vera arma di stabilizzazione del lavoro regolare. Costa, ma secondo noi si può fare, o forse semplicemente si deve fare. E questo è il momento. Con la riforma fiscale prevista nel PNRR, la declinazione italiana del Next Generation EU, ed ancora prima con le misure del Family Act, la riforma strutturale del welfare familiare, a cui sta lavorando il governo italiano, pensiamo si possano reperire le risorse per avviare la soluzione proposta. In conclusione, per eliminare il lavoro regolare in Italia, che riguarda 1,5 milioni di famiglie e 1,2 milioni di lavoratori, occorre creare un conflitto di interessi tra le parti, basato su regole stabili che da un lato sostengano le famiglie e dall'altro aiutino i lavoratori. Senza queste soluzioni fallirà ogni tentativo di rendere normale il lavoro regolare, ed anche le norme future, alcune già in itinere come quelle in materia di salario minimo, non avranno seguito per i lavoratori irregolari. Vi ringrazio per l'attenzione e convinto che questa esperienza italiana possa essere di aiuto per un lavoro domestico dignitoso, vi auguro buona visione di questa micro animazione datata 15 dicembre 2020, che prego la regia di mandare in onda.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So, Dimitri, I suppose that you are going to show the video. Thanks.
Nel 2019, in Italia, i lavoratori domestici regolarmente assunti dalle famiglie erano circa 850.000, un piccolo esercito fatto prevalentemente di donne, l'88,7%, e di stranieri, 70,3%, che negli ultimi 8 anni ha subito un costante decremento. Una sicura inversione di tendenza si registrerà nel 2020, quando il numero di colf, badanti e babysitter regolari potrebbe arrivare a superare 1 milione di addetti, proprio come avvenuto nel 2012. Il motivo? Sempre lo stesso, la sanatoria. L'ultima in ordine di tempo, quella autorizzata dal DL Rilancio in piena emergenza sanitaria da Covid-19, si è conclusa il 15 agosto 2020 e ha fatto emergere la posizione irregolare di circa 180.000 cittadini extracomunitari senza permesso di soggiorno, già impiegati come domestici. Un vero e proprio boom di domande che ha rappresentato l'85% del totale delle richieste pervenute sul portale del Ministero dell'Interno. Numeri importanti che hanno confermato i dati pubblicati da Assindatcolf e IDOS mesi prima che la pandemia sconvolgesse i sistemi sanitari e l'economia mondiale. A dicembre 2019 stimavamo infatti che su 530.000 non comunitari privi di permesso di soggiorno presenti in Italia a fine 2018, tra i 150 e i 200.000 fossero impiegati come colf, badanti e babysitter. Una piaga sociale ed economica in parte generata da una strutturale mancanza di programmazione di flussi di ingresso per motivi di lavoro, ma tuttavia solo la punta di un iceberg di un fenomeno ben più profondo, il lavoro nero, che in Italia riguarda 6 domestici su 10. A questi 1,2 milioni di lavoratori invisibili, il DL Rilancio ha dato solo una parziale risposta. Se è vero che nel 2021 si inizieranno a vedere gli effetti della sanatoria, con l'emersione dei 180.000 lavoratori, che cosa succederà a tutti gli altri? Per loro, ovvero per circa 1 milione di domestici, l'assunzione continuerà ad essere un miraggio, almeno fino a quando non saranno introdotte misure stabili che incentivino al lavoro regolare. Ad oggi, infatti, il sistema fiscale italiano consente di portare in deduzione solo una minima parte dei contributi versati per l'attività di colf, badanti e babysitter e per un massimo di 1.549,37 euro all'anno. I costi però sono ben maggiori e in alcuni casi possono arrivare a sfiorare 17.000 euro l'anno tra tredicesima, TFR e stipendi, la cui detrazione è consentita per un massimo di 399 euro l'anno e neanche a tutti, ma solo a chi, nella condizione di non autosufficienza e con reddito sotto i 40.000 euro, abbia assunto una badante. Ma cosa serve per invertire la tendenza? In una sola parola, incentivi, non bonus, ma una riforma strutturale che sia dalla parte delle famiglie e che renda conveniente assumere, come avverrebbe se si potessero portare in deduzione i costi del dipendente della loro totalità, non solo i contributi, ma anche il TFR e lo stipendio, che è la parte più consistente della spesa a carico delle famiglie. In questo modo il datore potrebbe risparmiare dai 2 ai 5.000 euro l'anno e molti di quei lavoratori neri potrebbero emergere dalle irregolarità. Al contrario, rischierebbero di diventare presto invisibili anche quelli che oggi hanno chiesto di aderire alla sanatoria. È già accaduto nel 2012. Ora siamo ancora in tempo per imparare dagli errori del passato.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this film. It seems that there was a little problem with the English interpretation was not loud enough. So I think all those who were listening to English could not really get the most of the content. I mean, as far as I understand, you have main 2 big challenges in Italy to fight undeclared work in the domestic work sector. One is to legalize the work, to bring it out into the formal labor market, and here probably also mainly the undocumented migrant workers who need also resident permits. So I understand that you had some amnesties there, which were very successful. But then, as we saw here, that also the other question is, in order to make it yeah, more attractive to have domestic workers declared. You are pleading for advocating for a structural reform of the tax system, if I understood this correctly. So really to allow families or the users of home helpers, carers, babysitters to deduct more costs. So I don't know whether you wanted to add something to this, probably say a few more words for those who did not. There was a request whether you could just say a few words on the content. Would this be possible, just briefly? Thank you.
Sì, io sono assolutamente convinto che i temi nel lavoro domestico siano due. Essendo un lavoro non di lucro, non dove qualcuno guadagna sul lavoro di altri, credo che si debba distinguere decisamente tra le misure di lavoro e le misure di welfare. Le misure di lavoro servono essenzialmente per rendere regolare il lavoro domestico. Le misure di welfare servono per la domiciliarità, per il sostegno alle famiglie deboli e devono essere dirette al datore di lavoro. Ma non dobbiamo confondere le due misure. Senza un lavoro regolare nemmeno il welfare potrebbe funzionare.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. I was also very interested in what you said, that apparently in Italy you use this EU recovery and resilience facilities to improve the situation in the domestic work sector, so to help families and so on. So probably we could, not today, but I would be interested in how you were doing it, so probably we can exchange on another platform. So in the chat, I don't think that there were any questions, no. So this is why I propose that we continue. Okay, I just read from Aurélie that we will send all the participants an English transcript of the video later on, so you can read it. Thank you very much, Aurélie. Okay, I propose that we then go to the next speaker, an old friend, Jean-François Lebrun. I think, yeah, Jean-François has a very long experience with personal and household services. I think when working with the European Commission, DG Employment, many years ago, he was already strongly advocating for personal and household services. He's even probably known as a pioneer of PHS. And Jean-François in the last years was really involved in all the relevant activities on personal household services in Europe and in the last decade, and also was a very strong support to all our work. So today I understand well, Jean-François, that you will present the French model, more or less, so the policies which were undertaken in France to support personal and household services. I see that you start sharing your screen. Okay, you have the floor, Jean-François. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Christine, et bonjour à tout le monde. Alors, quelle est la situation des services déclarés à la personne et aux ménages en France? Pour répondre à cette question, je vais vous présenter quelques résultats d'une étude menée en 2016 au sein du ministère des Finances à Paris. Cette étude portait sur la situation en 2014. Ces activités de service à la personne représentent 1% du PIB, 5% de la population active, soit 1,4 million d'emplois, ou l'équivalent de 450 000 équivalents temps plein. La différence est en lien avec l'importance du travail à temps partiel dans ces activités. Ces activités sont largement dépendantes de soutien public. Une intensification de ceux-ci, de l'aide publique, se répercute facilement sur la demande, par exemple dans les années 90 et au début des années 2000. Depuis la crise économique, l'activité s'est stabilisée après une vingtaine d'années de croissance. Élément intéressant en France, c'est que les activités de care, de soins à la personne, sont équivalentes aux activités d'indirect care, tels que les travaux ménagers. Notons que les activités de pure care intègrent également des activités d'indirect care, ne fût-ce que pour maintenir une personne âgée à son domicile. Autre élément intéressant, c'est que l'emploi prestataire est quasiment équivalent à l'emploi direct, celui-ci étant même légèrement supérieur. Il faut aussi noter que dans les pays au nord de l'Europe, c'est plutôt l'emploi prestataire qui est majoritaire, et au sud de la France, c'est plutôt les emplois directs. Alors, quel est le coût de ces emplois? Je crois que c'est une question qui est intéressante et qui intéresse beaucoup de personnes. Si on subventionne ces activités, combien cela coûte-t-il? Si on regarde l'ensemble des activités, on constate qu'en 2014, le coût brut pour l'État était de 11,5 milliards d'euros, un montant non négligeable. Ce coût reprend toutes les mesures participant à la réduction du prix horaire payé par l'utilisateur. Des mesures directes, des mesures générales, des mesures spécifiques, des soutiens à l'offre, des soutiens à la demande. Mais ces activités génèrent également des revenus bruts pour l'État, composés de cotisations de sécurité sociale, d'impôts et de taxes, et ce pour un montant de 8,7 milliards d'euros. La différence entre ces coûts et ces recettes brutes, la balance fiscale, est négative de 2,7 milliards d'euros. Il y a donc un coût de ces mesures. Il faut savoir que sans aide publique, le prix horaire de vente se situerait à plus ou moins 20 € en moyenne. Et suite au soutien public, le prix payé par l'utilisateur est en moyenne de 8,5 €, soit une diminution de 57%. Regardons maintenant les grands groupes d'activités que sont le care et l'indirect care. Si on regarde les activités de care, le coût brut, les recettes brutes et la balance fiscale s'établissent respectivement à 7,2 milliards, à 4,3 milliards et à moins 2,8 milliards. Pour les activités d'indirect care, on obtient un coût de 4,3 milliards, des revenus bruts de 4,4 milliards et finalement une balance fiscale relativement équilibrée. Alors, on a vu précédemment que le nombre d'heures entre le care et l'indirect care était relativement équilibré. Il est donc logique qu'il en soit de même au niveau des recettes de l'ordre de 4 milliards d'euros. La grande différence se situe au niveau du coût, mais c'est lié à l'importance de la réduction de prix que vont avoir ces mesures. Moins 75% dans le cadre des activités de care et moins 40% dans celui des activités d'indirect care. Et ceci est en lien directement avec les logiques d'intervention publique. Il y a deux grandes logiques qui vont intervenir en France, mais c'est généralement le cas dans tous les pays. La logique des politiques sociales, qui vont concerner les services sociaux, dont l'un des objectifs sera de veiller à un accès aussi universel que possible à ces services. Et généralement, le ciblage de la politique sera ciblé sur des personnes à faible revenu ou à des niveaux de dépendance élevés. Et le prix payé par les utilisateurs pourra être largement inférieur au prix notamment du travail non déclaré. La balance fiscale sera négative. À l'inverse, la logique qui sous-tend les activités d'indirect care sont à trouver dans la création d'emplois ou le développement économique. Le soutien ne sera pas ciblé sur un type d'utilisateur, il le sera sur un type d'activité. Le prix payé par utilisateur devra être compétitif par rapport au travail non déclaré, mais également proche du coût d'opportunité de l'utilisateur, son propre salaire net. Et généralement, le niveau de subside correspondra au niveau des prélèvements obligatoires, ce qu'on appelle le tax wedge. Et ici, en France, ça va se situer aux alentours de 40 à 50%. Donc, la situation française respectait assez bien cette double logique. Il y a une hypothèse importante qui a été faite, c'est qu'on n'a pas pu prendre en compte ce qu'on appelle les effets d'aubaine. Qu'est-ce qui se passe quand une personne achète sans soutien public, parce qu'il en a notamment les moyens, et qu'on n'avait pas non plus d'informations sur les nouveaux droits acquis par les personnes qui allaient commencer le travail dans ce secteur, et aussi sur les effets indirects, les effets de retour indirects, notamment liés aux externalités positives. Toutefois, on peut imaginer que ce sont des hypothèses réalistes si on prend un effet d'aubaine aux alentours de 20%. Si on considère que notamment en France, ce sont des activités proches du salaire minimum et que donc on peut considérer que l'augmentation est de 5%. Et si on regarde en Belgique, les effets indirects qui ont été calculés, notamment dans le cadre des effets indirects par des chercheurs en Belgique. Ce qui est intéressant, c'est de voir aussi l'impact sur le travail au noir. Et il y a deux grands éléments qui vont nous intéresser. Tout d'abord, on remarquera un impact en termes absolus, puisqu'on va passer de 400 millions à 300 millions pour le travail non déclaré, une baisse de 25%, mais surtout une part relative qui va passer de 65% à 25%. Et ça, c'est dû principalement à l'effet important de l'augmentation de la demande, qui est passée au total de 600 millions à 1,2 milliard, lié notamment au fait que le prix est devenu compétitif. Derniers éléments, ce qui est donc important, c'est une capacité à avoir une bonne solvabilisation de la demande, une bonne réduction de prix, un besoin aussi d'un système de réduction qui soit simple, à la fois pour l'utilisateur, mais en même temps pour les prestataires. Et par exemple, en France, il y avait le CESU, un système déclaratif, et demain, en 2022, il va y avoir une transformation, je dirais, du crédit d'impôt en une subvention directe et immédiate. Très important aussi, c'est d'avoir un système qui puisse être compétitif si on veut un marché où les prix sont libres, tel que c'est pour l'indirect care en France. Et il faut la coexistence, dans ce cas, entre un emploi direct et un emploi de prestataire. Enfin, l'importance du dialogue social, on l'a déjà noté, il est très important, il existe beaucoup pour les emplois prestataires, mais il mérite certainement d'être augmenté pour l'emploi direct. Il n'y a qu'en France et en Italie où il existe un véritable dialogue social structuré pour ces emplois directs. Et enfin, bien sûr, développer la professionnalisation, la formation continue. C'est important pour l'image de marque, pour l'attractivité, mais également pour la qualité de ces emplois. Et finalement, en conclusion, je crois que c'est sur base de ces éléments qu'on peut se rendre compte qu'il est possible d'avoir une politique de soutien pertinente et à coût réduit pour ces emplois. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention.
Alors, thank you very much. Sorry?
Voilà.
Thank you very much, Jean-François. Was a bit technical, I must say. Yeah, thanks for showing a bit the difference of whether this is tackled from a social policy or from an employment or economic policy point of view. You mentioned social dialogue at the end of your presentation. I mean, I understand that in France there is social dialogue, so there are collective agreements in the PHS sector. So they certainly have some impact on the prices of the various services. And Yeah, I mean, but what it showed very clearly that it's often about cost. So everything is about cost. If we want that there is some government intervention, then we easily get to the question of how much will it cost. In the chat and question answer, I don't see any questions. So this is why I propose that we continue with the next speaker. Und ich werde jetzt auf Deutsch wechseln, weil die nächste Rednerin möchte ich gerne auf Deutsch vorstellen, weil die Kollegin aus Deutschland kommt und weil sie des Englischen auch nicht so ganz mächtig ist. Ja, wir freuen uns hier heute, Renate Kuhn bei uns zu haben. Renate Kuhn ist bei dem Deutschen Gewerkschaftsbund, dem DGB, zuständig für Arbeitsmarktpolitik. Und Renate beschäftigt sich seit einiger Zeit mit haushaltsnahen Dienstleistungen, also den Household Services. Wir wissen ja, dass Deutschland das IAO-Übereinkommen 189 zwar ratifiziert hat 2013, dass aber trotzdem noch ein wesentlicher Teil der Hausangestellten, der Domestic Workers in Deutschland immer noch unangemeldet beschäftigt ist. Und Renate hat sich zum Ziel gesetzt, seit einigen Jahren nachzuweisen, dass es auch für Deutschland Modelle geben kann, um haushaltsnahe Dienstleistungen aus der Grauzone zu bringen. Aber wie so oft bedarf es natürlich dafür auch des politischen Willens. Ich denke, dazu wird uns Renate jetzt mehr sagen. Ihre Präsentation ist auf Englisch, aber Renate wird ihre Präsentation auf Deutsch vortragen. Renate, du hast 10 Minuten. Bitte lade deine Präsentation hoch. Ich muss noch mal versuchen, glaube ich, die ist wieder weg.
Jetzt müsste es klappen. Jetzt?
Noch nicht.
Moment. So, jetzt klappt.
Moment. Ja, wunderbar. Musst du noch zu Anfang zurückgehen? Geht.
Es tut mir leid, könnt ihr mich nach hinten schieben? Ich kann im Augenblick nicht, mein Gerät hat sich abgeschaltet. Ich muss die Präsentation neu hochladen. Könnt ihr einen inzwischen sprechen lassen? Geht das?
Sorry. So there are some technical issues. I also was kicked out and had to restart my computer, my system. I hope you all hear me. So Renate has problems to do her presentation. Renate, Renate, ich kann auch deine Präsentation hochladen und dann brauchst du nur reden. Wollen wir das machen?
Das geht, ja.
Okay, dann mache ich das mal eben, ja?
Das ist gut, Dankeschön.
Sorry for the inconvenience. Wie du. Ja. So, here we go. So.
Tut mir sehr leid, aber der Computer hat sich überhitzt.
Mhm. Du musst deins abschalten. Du musst deine Share-Sache abschalten. Du musst Stop Sharing machen.
Kann ich gerade nicht, weil hier kommt nur, Sie können den Screenshot nicht starten. Okay. Also, ja, so. Ich kann es nicht abschalten. Ja. Jetzt sehe ich es. Kannst du es noch? Bin ich zu hören? Ja, also ich möchte mich sehr herzlich bedanken dafür, dass ich heute die Gelegenheit habe, hier zu sprechen und Ihnen vorstellen kann, wofür sich der DGB bezogen auf die haushaltsnahen Dienstleistungen einsetzt. Das Hauptziel, also unser Hauptziel ist die Anerkennung der Hausarbeit als Arbeit wie jede andere und diese zu formalisieren und zu regulieren. Können wir die nächste Folie machen?
Mhm. Ja.
Ja, der Arbeitsmarkt der haushaltsnahen Dienstleistungen ist in Deutschland nach wie vor überwiegend geprägt durch undokumentierte Arbeit. Circa 90% aller Beschäftigungsverhältnisse sind informell. Für ca. 3,8 Millionen Haushalte gibt es gegenwärtig nur ca. 369.000 offiziell Beschäftigte, die angemeldet arbeiten. Aufgrund der geringfügigen Beschäftigung, bei der man bis zu 450 € Einkommen keine Steuern und Sozialversicherungsbeiträge zahlt, sind nur ca. 49.000 Beschäftigte sozialversichert. Das heißt, die überwiegende Mehrzahl der Haushalte ist prekär beschäftigt, also beschäftigt Haushaltshilfen prekär oder in Schwarzarbeit. Darunter sind auch 100.000 bis 300.000 Beschäftigte, die in den Haushalten leben. Es gibt sogar Schätzungen, die gehen bis zu 600.000. Diese kommen überwiegend aus osteuropäischen Ländern und werden über ausländische Agenturen vermittelt. Sie sind häufig scheinselbstständig und genießen oftmals keine deutschen Arbeitnehmerrechte. Befragt, warum die Haushaltshilfen, die Haushalte die Haushaltshilfen nicht anmelden, ist die häufigste Antwort, man möchte Geld sparen. Und die zweithäufigste Antwort ist, die Haushaltshilfe möchte nicht angemeldet werden. Hinzu kommt noch ein dritter Grund, nämlich dass da gesagt wird, das Anmeldeverfahren ist oft zu kompliziert. Legale Arbeit scheint also für viele Haushalte nicht bezahlbar und auch für die Beschäftigten nicht attraktiv. Und so scheint es doch, dass für beide die Schwarzarbeit wesentlich attraktiver ist. Ja, gehen wir nächste Folie. Seit mehr als 20 Jahren gibt es in Deutschland verschiedene Versuche, das Problem zu lösen und auch immer wieder offizielle Bestätigungen, dass unbedingt Regelungen geschaffen werden müssen. Einige davon hatte ich mal hier aufgelistet. Zu bestimmten Anlässen kommt dieses Thema immer wieder in den Medien hoch, bekommt besondere Aufmerksamkeit für einige Tage, aber es passiert dann trotzdem wieder nichts. Das bestehende System, wonach haushaltsnahe Dienstleistungen von der Einkommenssteuer abgesetzt werden können, hat nicht dazu beigetragen, die undokumentierte Beschäftigung zurückzudrängen und gute Arbeit für Beschäftigung zu sichern. Ebenso ist der Versuch, durch geringfügige Beschäftigung ein erleichtertes Anmeldeverfahren und irgendwelche anderen Mittel Schwarzarbeit zurückzudrängen, gescheitert. Also man hat schon den Eindruck, dass der gegenwärtige Zustand toleriert wird, auch wenn einzelne Aussagen offizieller Ministerien und von offizieller Seite anders lauten. Für die Menschen, die in den Haushalten leben, gab es jetzt vor kurzem, vor wenigen Tagen erst ein höchstrichterliches Urteil, das nämlich festgestellt hat, dass Beschäftigungszeit voll zu finanzieren ist. Das heißt also, Beschäftigung in den Haushalten muss nach Mindestlohn bezahlt werden, und zwar jede Stunde, auch Bereitschaftszeit. Und das ist natürlich jetzt etwas, wo die Politik zum Handeln gezwungen ist und für uns eine Gelegenheit, das Zuschussmodell noch mal ganz stark in die öffentliche Diskussion zu bringen. Nächste Folie. Das Problem ist, dass es in Deutschland seit Jahren einen wachsenden Fachkräftebedarf gibt, nach gut qualifizierten Fachkräften. Ein Beispiel für ungenutztes Fachkräftepotenzial sind allerdings die Frauen. Wenn man sich das hier mal ansieht, wächst zwar die Erwerbsbeteiligung der Frauen. Wenn man das im 10-Jahres-Zeitraum vergleicht, ist das heute noch genauso wie 2018. Allerdings wächst diese Erwerbsbeteiligung nur in Teilzeitbeschäftigung. Und wenn man sich dann anguckt, warum die Frauen in Teilzeitbeschäftigung sind, dann geben fast 50% der Frauen an, dass sie persönliche oder familiäre Verpflichtungen haben und nur deshalb in Teilzeit arbeiten können. Nur 9% der Frauen geben an, keine Vollzeitbeschäftigung zu finden. Das heißt also, hier besteht ganz großer Handlungsbedarf. Nächste Folie. Was will der DGB? Was wollen wir? Wir wollen, dass die Transparenz hergestellt wird von Nachfrage und Angebot. Also wir wollen tatsächlich das, was geleistet wird und das, was tatsächlich an Bedarf da ist, sichtbar gemacht wird. Und wir denken, dass die sinnvollste Version dafür die Zuschussversion ist, nach belgischem Vorbild. Durch einen Zuschuss nach belgischem Vorbild sollen Nachfrage und Angebote über Dienstleistungsbetriebe gesteuert werden und das macht sie erst transparent. Wir wollen, dass die Betriebe, die sich an diesem System beteiligen, sich zertifizieren lassen müssen, um gute Arbeit für die Beschäftigten zu sichern. Gute Arbeit für Beschäftigte also tarifgebunden sind, dass Aus- und Weiterbildung stattfindet, dass Aus- und Weiterbildung auch Entwicklungsperspektiven eröffnet, dass die Einkommen der Beschäftigten existenzsichernd sind und dass die Sozialversicherung für alle gültig ist. Und wir wollen, dass der Zuschuss für alle Haushalte unabhängig vom Einkommen gewährt wird. Nächste Folie. Wir haben den Vorschlag gemeinsam mit dem Deutschen Hauswirtschaftsrat, dem Arbeitgeberverband der Dienstleister der haushaltsnahen Dienstleistungen, an die politischen Parteien und zuständigen Ministerien herangetragen. In den meisten Fällen treffen wir auf Zustimmung. Es bewegt sich aber trotzdem nichts. Und das hat uns mal dazu geführt, mal zu überlegen, woran kann es liegen. Einmal sind es die Finanzen. Wir haben ausgerechnet, genauso wie das in Frankreich gemacht wurde, dass das finanzierbar ist. Aufgrund der Komplexität des Themas sind bei uns verschiedene Ministerien beteiligt an dem Thema dran und mit jeweils unterschiedlichen Schwerpunktsetzungen. Das braucht sehr viel Abstimmungsbedarf. Hinzu kommt, dass die Ministerien zum Teil auch in unterschiedlicher parteipolitischer Zuständigkeit sind, wo sich die Parteien schon sehr unterschiedlich mit dem Thema beschäftigen und auch unterschiedliche Lösungen wollen. Zum Beispiel hat die CDU in ihrem Wahlprogramm gesagt, sie möchte gern dieses Absetzsystem über die Einkommensteuer beibehalten, während die SPD eben gern ein Zuschusssystem einführen würde, aber noch kein tragbares Konzept dafür hat. Ein weiterer Grund ist der, dass wir wollen, dass die Finanzierung aus dem Bundeshaushalt getragen wird. Die Rückflüsse gehen aber in andere Töpfe. Die gehen in den Haushalt der Kommunen, zum Teil über die Steuern, zum Teil in die Sozialversicherung. Im Bundeshaushalt direkt würde sich das erst später auswirken, und zwar durch Einsparungen in den staatlichen Transfersystemen, zum Beispiel durch Einsparungen auch bei Zuschüssen zur Sicherung der Altersrente, und nur ein geringer Teil kommt tatsächlich als Steuern in den Bundeshaushalt zurück. Und es gibt keinen schnellen Erfolg, der sich politisch gut verkaufen lässt, sondern das System wird am Anfang viel Geld brauchen und im Moment will ja sowieso kaum jemand Geld zusätzlich in die Hand nehmen. Der DGB hat ausgerechnet, wie gesagt, dass ich das finanzieren würde. Wir haben im Backup der Präsentation die Berechnung mal mit beigefügt. Wir haben aber auch ausgerechnet, dass sich hier in Zukunft mehr als 1,7 Millionen Arbeitsplätze, Vollzeitarbeitsplätze, schaffen ließen. Wir haben, und zwar mit großer Perspektive für die Zukunft. Wir sehen allerdings, dass die Grundlage dafür die Professionalisierung der Dienstleistung und die Anerkennung dieser Arbeit als wertschöpfend sein muss. Jetzt nächste Folie. Fazit: Es gibt in einem solchen System nur Gewinner. Das ist vorhin schon mal angesprochen. Die Beschäftigten bekommen Sicherheit, bekommen Einkommen, gesichertes Einkommen, sind sozialversichert. Die Dienstleistungsbetriebe müssen nicht mehr gegen die Konkurrenz der Schwarzarbeit sich aufstellen. Die Haushalte, die abgesichert werden und vor allem, wo das Angebot auch zur Verfügung stehen würde, ein legales Angebot. Die Arbeitgeber aber auch, die dringend Fachkräfte suchen. Wenn man sich überlegt, von den ca. 5 Millionen Frauen, die heute nicht arbeiten in Deutschland und keine Arbeit suchen, sind die meisten gut bis sehr gut ausgebildet. Die Sozialversicherungen würden gestärkt, die öffentlichen Kassen würden gestärkt. Es gäbe für Frauen und Männer mehr Gerechtigkeit auf dem Arbeitsmarkt. Es könnten neue Betriebe entstehen, neue Arbeitsplätze und neue Berufe, auch mit unterschiedlichen Anforderungen an das Qualifikationsniveau. Hier zeigt sich das Potenzial des riesigen Zukunftsarbeitsmarktes. Wir haben in unseren ganzen Diskussionen immer wieder auch nach Nachteilen gesucht. Wir haben keine gefunden. Und deshalb werden wir uns weiter dafür einsetzen, dass Deutschland endlich ein vernünftiges System umsetzt. Dankeschön für die Aufmerksamkeit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Renate, for this example from Germany. It's very interesting to see all the calculations you made and really showing that it would be really a win-win-win-win-win situation for everybody. But apparently the question is, yeah, the political will. Huh? So, I mean, okay, you said that apparently if you introduce such a system, there will be no quick political success. And as you also described, the money is a bit shifted around in the different pots in Germany. So those who invest would probably not necessarily benefit from this. So, so I don't know what the way out will be for Germany. So whether you have some possible allies, but I mean, we see you mentioned the Belgian system, and we saw that it was very successful for a country which is much smaller than Germany. I mean, there were 150,000 jobs created. I mean, 150,000 domestic workers are in the formal labor market with all protection and all training and professionalization and so on. So, yeah, I think we will certainly continue to support you in pushing for this. So, I mean, now there are elections coming up in Germany, so probably there might be in the near future some new allies you can push for this. Okay, thank you very much for this presentation. There are no questions so far. So then, as I said, there are two more speakers from the European institutions. We heard from Nicolas Schmidt that the undeclared work platform should take care of the domestic work sectors. I think he doesn't have to tell us, or you, because we have been doing this already for some time. So we are happy to have with us today here, first of all, Elodie Fazzi. Elodie used to be the coordinator of the Secretariat of the European Platform Tackling Undeclared Work. So we have been working together for many years. I understand that now with the move of the undeclared work platform to the European Labour Authority, you're no longer coordinating the secretariat, but therefore we have with us Christoph Bandasch, who is now working for the European Labour Authority and is now the secretariat of the undeclared work platform, which has become a permanent working group. So, as I said, Nicolas Schmidt doesn't have to tell us that we have that the undeclared work platform has to work on this. I mean, we have discussed domestic workers many times. I think even EFAT brought it up very early in 2018. We had even one dedicated plenary meeting of the undeclared work platform in 2018, where we looked into service voucher systems in several member states, and most of them were dedicated for the domestic work sectors. And we also had a good report on the service voucher systems as a form of deterrence, as a prevention measure for undeclared work. And also, and I think you will probably also talk about this, in the work program of this year and next year of the undeclared work platform, we will have a sector-specific seminar on undeclared work in the PHS sector, the personal household sector, household services sector, and this will happen in the first quarter of 2022, if I'm not fully mistaken. And there's also a study in the making. So I think the undeclared work platform is working on personal and household services. So I'm curious, and I think all the participants are curious to listen to you, Elodie and Christoph. So what the next steps are in the platform? Everybody of you has 6 minutes. Please, Elodie, you start.
Thanks, Kerstin. Good afternoon to all. I will try to keep it quite short. And indeed, I'm speaking here with a double hat as currently in the unit in charge of free movement of workers. And you will see beyond the platform, there's still quite a few activities in the Commission on undeclared work, and as former secretary. And I'll just try to say a few words about basically what can be done in the EU on the issue. Obviously, we've seen it, undeclared work in personal household services. It's really a challenge that is common to many, many member states. And we talked a lot about data already this afternoon. It's challenging to have data on undeclared work, but I would like to recall that last year, as Commission, we published a Eurobarometer survey on undeclared work. And the survey actually showed that over a quarter of those who actually had worked undeclared in the EU had done it in the personal service sector. So childcare, care for elderly, cleaning. And that was actually the most common type of undeclared goods and services. So the challenge is very clear. Obviously, there's not one, but many different faces of undeclared work in the sector: employee, self-employed, people without any contract, people receiving cash in hand. And the pandemic has completely changed also the rules of to some extent changed the rule of the game. I think never before had the dramatic effects of undeclared work been so obviously shown to the wider public. They were really workers in terrible situations, those who were working undeclared. But we also see somehow a risk that some businesses who are so far complying will also be tempted to cross the red line because of obviously the financial situation. So all this somehow calls for new approaches with a strong focus on prevention. So the question also for me as Commission representative is, what can the EU do actually? And I think it's also important to recall here that tackling undeclared work is primarily in the hands of the national authorities. So ministries, inspectorates, social partners, but really the EU also has a role to play because there's a lot that the member states can learn from each other, but also because it has an important cross-border dimension as well, and we'll come to that. So there's a lot that has been done already. The issue is followed in the context of the European semester, for example, in our policy dialogue with member states. Early on, we talked about the situation in Italy, and Italy has in the past received a country-specific recommendation on undeclared work. So that's very much on the agenda. As you know, the Commission has also supported a pilot project on advancing personal and household services. And the activities really provided an opportunity to bring the different stakeholders together to strengthen networks and to increase knowledge of personal household service practices in the EU. When it comes to money, obviously the European Social Fund can support many types of activities, from capacity building to awareness raising, and many also of the massive investment efforts which are being made right now in the context of recovery can also be used actually to address undeclared work. And we had an example before. Coming to the platform, so the platform tackling undeclared work, and Kerstin, you know it very well. It was created 5 years ago to strengthen the cooperation with the different member states. It has put new challenges on the agenda. We had a lot of activities, including some that you just mentioned, on the issue of prevention, for example. You can find a lot of materials in the virtual library on the platform, so I will not give a lot of detail, but I would like to focus on the message that came from the platform. And one of this very strong that came across is that more prevention is essential. It's really, really important in a sector like personal household services, because it's a sector with many mobile migrant workers who might not be really aware of their rights, but it's also a sector, and we discussed it, where inspections are very, very difficult. So here, when it comes to prevention, I'd like to mention two instruments that can play a very important role, and we've discussed them already. The first one is service vouchers. And here there was a study, there was a dedicated discussion on this. So these vouchers, they're used by more than a quarter of member states, according to a survey we had in the platform. And obviously, they're not all the same. But the discussion has focused a lot on service vouchers, but I would also like not to forget the potential of tax rebates and tax incentives. And this tends to be used, I would say, in the more northern part of Europe. So we had an example earlier on from Denmark, but it's also the case in Finland and in Sweden. And you can find lots of fishes in our library. I mean, these practices, they've really taken millions of workers out of precariousness. They gave them access to unemployment benefits and pension systems. And evaluations in Sweden and Finland also show that they can change also public attitudes towards undeclared work, and that's very important. They also have wider benefits, stimulating growth and supporting families. But one of the points we've discussed very clearly now is also the cost. I mean, they tend to be presented as well as rather costly schemes. And that's why they need to be really considered in the long term and to target sectors and issues where undeclared work is particularly relevant. But also, just to give you one example, in Sweden, the evaluation had concluded that each euro invested was actually returned in the form of tax revenue. And I think this question of cost benefits is really essential, very important in that debate. Also, to design these schemes in a way that is very user-friendly and to really take into account the potential risk of fraud is very important. But again, I think we should not forget that they should be part of a much broader range of tools. We talked about regularization initiative for migrant workers, and awareness raising also towards companies and workers are very important. I would say even more also now in a context where we see that the collaborative economy somehow raises also many, many questions. And we had also seen with the Eurobarometer on undeclared work that more than 10% of people working undeclared had actually used those platforms. So clearly the border between what is allowed, what is not allowed can become very blurry sometimes. And that's why information is very important. So I'll now give the floor to Christophe to present you. I focused on what was happened in the past, the messages, and Christophe, who's now in the lead on the platform, will tell you about the future activities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Elodie. So we go directly to Christophe. There are some questions already in the chat, but I think we will tackle them at the end. Okay, Christophe, please.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to this conference. As mentioned before, I'm the task coordinator for tackling undeclared work at the Enforcement Analysis Unit of the European Labour Authority. Let me first say a few words about ELA, the authority I represent, as it's still quite a young institution and its objectives and tasks may not be known to all the participants. So ELA is tasked with supporting everyday cooperation between the national authorities to enforce fair labor mobility and provide further tools to both individuals and employers to be aware of their rights and comply with their obligations, while also promoting the fair labor mobility for all. Although ELA's main focus is on cross-border dimension, the authority also supports member states in tackling undeclared work, both within national boundaries and in its cross-border dimension. I would like to also emphasize that many aspects of labor law, including relevant EU directives and regulations, lie outside of the scope of the authority. So when we talk about European Labour Authority, we should not think that all labor laws, all labor legislation created at the EU level is within the scope of ELA. This, for instance, concerns occupational health and safety legislation, which is outside of ELA's mandate. Finally, I think it's worth highlighting that ELA was established less than 2 years ago, so it's still relatively young and will reach its full operational capacity only in 2024, and currently operates at still relatively low number of its staff, but it's growing, so it's a good news. As mentioned previously by you, Kerstin, by Elodie, the European platform tackling undeclared work has been re-established as a permanent working group at ELA a month ago. And we believe that the platform should keep building on its strength as a knowledge hub and incubator for exchange and innovation among practitioners. And we intend to ensure the business continuity concerning platform activities. So the platform continues to operate based on its work program for 21-22, and the domestic work is high on its agenda, as already highlighted. So currently, the platform, we as a platform secretariat, we started working on the report on tackling undeclared work in the personal and household services sector to be finalized later this year. And among others, this study will look at the prevalence and characteristics of undeclared work in the defined types of services within the domestic work, and also on various ways how to tackle undeclared work in the sector. So I'm sure we will also reflect upon some elements which were earlier mentioned in the debate and at the conference today. And the study will serve as an analytical input for the seminar, which will be taking place next year, also dedicated to tackling undeclared work in the care and personal and household services sector. And we will look at this seminar both to prevention and deterrence measures, as we find both very important, also following the platform's logic of more holistic approaches to tackling undeclared work. Beyond that, we have shortlisted the subject of inspections in the personal and household services sector for more in-depth discussion between platform members later this year. Here, the final decision on the subject of so-called peer learning dialogue depends on national authorities interested to participate in them. So we'll see if this will be the subject chosen or not, but we certainly perceive it as an important one. So as demonstrated by the example which I just mentioned, we clearly intend to continue supporting mutual learning in the area of combating undeclared work in domestic work. We also continue to support sharing of good practices in this area, and Elodie mentioned already before that there has been much done by the platform. But going beyond supporting member states in tackling undeclared work, I would like to also briefly mention a potential role of other strands at ELA. So the authority can help improve the enforcement of workers' rights in the sector by promoting the cooperation and building capacity of national organizations, as well by supporting concerted and joint inspections, for instance. The importance of prevention was highlighted several times today, but considering the profile and the tools ELA has, I would like to elaborate on the point of inspection a bit more. Cross-border labor mobility is increasing across the EU. However, cross-border inspections are still not common. An effective cross-border inspection can help to address cross-border irregularities, such as bogus temporary work agencies, abuses in posting of workers, bogus self-employment, or undeclared work, also in the domestic work sector. And our goal is not only to increase the number of concerted and joint inspections, their geographical and sectoral coverage, but also to help to make such inspections more efficient, to help to enforce labor mobility acquis more properly and guarantee workers' rights. So ELA is tasked to be operational. We have developed tools and procedures for cross-border inspections, and we provide coordination support, legal expertise, as well as cover costs for travel, accommodation, translation, and interpretation of inspectors in this cross-border contexts. We aim to cooperate with various authorities such as Senior Labor Inspectorates, Committee, EU OSHA, but also importantly Europol, with which we also started cooperating already last year, also in the context of combating labor exploitation. We know that inspections in domestic work necessitate close cooperation at national level too, for instance, due to the complexities of accessing private premises, households, and irregularities often go beyond the competence of labor inspectors only, because they, for instance, consider physical abuses or the situation of third country nationals, and may constitute criminal offenses. Therefore, we aim to promote cooperation at national level between competent authorities. Currently, our analysis and risk assessment capacity is not up and running in full speed. Therefore, we count a lot on the in-field information from social partners and other stakeholders. So to conclude, the undeclared work platform, but also other work strands at ELA can complement each other in ensuring that fair labor mobility, and tackling undeclared work. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elodie and Christoph, for this elaboration of what the European platform tackling undeclared work does. I mean, yes, it's great that this will be a subject now of it is high on the agenda of the work program, and we are aware of what's going on now with regard to the seminar and the study. We already got invited for an interview to contribute to this survey. Yeah, I think we can only agree with you what you said, Elodie, that really prevention is the essential tool here to tackle undeclared work in this sector in all the different ways which are possible. Also very important, I think, what Renate presented. I mean, if we talk about costs, we really have to look into the long-term impact. So that it's not good to just look for short-term benefits there. Platform economy, we know that also the domestic work PHS is more and more going via platforms. This will be subject of another panel tomorrow. So we are certainly going to discuss this more in depth. I think one thing probably I think you didn't mention, Christoph, ELA is also running actually a campaign on mobile and migrant workers, which is already in the making. Will start fully in September, I guess. So I think it's mainly focusing for the moment on the agriculture sector, but probably also in this respect, in a follow-up or when this goes on, we can probably also look into the domestic work sector there. There was one concrete question to one of the panelists, to Renate. So the question was whether in Germany now, with a view to the upcoming elections, is there any group, any trade union, any workers group pushing to have this, to make this an issue for the elections of this year? There was also there was some information given in the chat. There was a lot of information all coming up in the chat. There was some exchange on this recent court decision in Germany, which said that also live-in care workers have to get the minimum wage for all the time they are available. Aurélie put a lot of information on the service vouchers, which we have there. So if you want, look in the chat, but I think we will also try to put a lot of make all this information available in a different way to all the participants of this workshop. So Renate, probably this question to you, because this was a very concrete question. Are there any plans to make this an issue for the elections?
Ja, es ist ein Thema. Es wird ein Thema zunehmend, weil die Parteien haben, fast alle Parteien haben sich zu dem Thema geäußert in ihren Wahlprogrammen. Allerdings sehr unterschiedlich und bis jetzt alle noch ziemlich unkonkret. Ich habe ja schon angesprochen, also die CDU, die ja Regierungspartei ist, obwohl es bei CDU und SPD im letzten Koalitionsvertrag bereits drin stand, dass eine Zuschusslösung gefunden werden soll, bekennt sich die CDU in ihrem jetzigen Wahlprogramm wieder zu der Lösung, haushaltsnahe Dienstleistungen abzusetzen über die Einkommenssteuer. Dort soll zwar ein bisschen mehr gezahlt werden und mehr möglich sein, aber das trifft ja wieder nur die Steuern zahlen, die viele Steuern zahlen und die natürlich dann auch sich das leisten können. Und gerade das wollen wir durchbrechen. Die SPD möchte gern ein Zuschussprogramm haben. Allerdings schwankt sie noch zwischen Bürgerversicherung und eventuell einem direkten Zuschussmodell. Da gibt es noch keine klaren Aussagen. Das aber, was passieren soll, steht in fast allen Parteiprogrammen. Ja.
Okay, thank you very much for this additional information. So wish you good luck. Let's hope that the party which will follow this up will win. Okay, we will know later this year. So there was one more question in the question and answer chat box. There was from Francesca Alice Vianello from Italy. She wanted to know more about from Christoph more about the inspections, because she says that in Italy they are very difficult. I might want to remind you that we are quite a bit over the time limit we have. So Christoph, if you could give a quick chat, but probably also there, I mean, particularly with inspections in the PHS, in the domestic work sector, I understand that the platform is still at the beginning of the discussions. This is correct. But please, Christoph, if you have a couple of minutes.
Thank you for this question. So, indeed, inspection in domestic work sector in private households are a very tricky issue. So it won't be easy. This is something which is clear. However, it doesn't mean that we should not look into the subject and have probably some deeper discussion also, and encourage sharing the experiences between member states, because different member states, different national authorities, labor inspectorates approach this issue differently. So at the very beginning of ELA existence, actually, last year summer, ELA participated in a short research project mapping organized in cooperation, I believe, with the Dutch Labor Inspectorate, where we looked into some experiences from member states, and we realized that in some countries, inspectors actually conduct inspection in households, in others they don't do it at all. So there were very diverging views among the inspectorates themselves. And concerning the concerted and joint inspections, ELA is ready to support and to coordinate. Here, the key factor is the cooperation and agreement of the member states involved. So ELA cannot do inspection on its own. This is an important fact. But we are there to support and to coordinate national inspectorates in case of cross-border situations. For instance, when you talk about posted workers, and we know that also many live-in carers are, for instance, posted workers or are recruited by temporary work agencies or other recruitment agencies from the countries of origin to the countries of destination. So maybe this briefly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christoph. So I assume that we can also follow up this question then in the framework of the work we are now starting with regard to the study and the seminar. So this is certainly something that we can also continue discussing there. So my dear colleagues, thank you to all the panelists who gave us a very good insight into their work they are doing in their institutions and in their countries. So I think that was very fruitful. This is not the end of our discussions. We are going to continue working on this. We have now come to the end of our timing, 10 minutes over the time. So thanks to the interpreters for being with us and being patient, going with this little bit more. Okay, so thank you all very much. We arrived at the end of this day, but this is not the end of our discussions. So I'm pretty sure there are a lot of issues and questions and new developments we are going to monitor and to cooperate. So I think, and also for you, probably from ELA, from the working group on undeclared work. So I mean, here you have really a wide forum of people, of all the stakeholders in the sector. So make use of it. So we really should also then in the future work involve all the stakeholders who are cooperating in this field. So thank you all very much for this very interesting discussion. We are finalized with this day. I think I'm supposed to bring up again this slide that if you want to continue the discussions, then you can do it in this Wonder platform. So there you can, some of you have already done it, so if you want, you can log on there and continue discussions and exchange of information. And all of you who will be with us tomorrow, we will start tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and then we will start with a panel on guaranteeing the effective enforcement of domestic workers' rights. So thank you all very much, and have a nice evening, and see you all tomorrow morning. Oh, sorry, did I share the this slide or not? Anyway, so if you want, you can continue on this one day to exchange more, and